Our today's lecture is about the classification of bones, and we have previously talked about the classification of muscles, and we also studied all the structures associated with the muscles. And in our today's lecture, we will talk about all the criteria on the basis of which we classify the bones into various classes. So, starting with the first classification, that is the developmental classification, we subdivided it into the intramembranous ossification and the intracartilaginous ossification. For the intracartilaginous ossification, we use another terminology which is endochondral ossification. The first ossification, that is the intramembranous. Another important thing is that when we are talking about the developmental classification, just remember that we are talking about the formation of the bone within the intrauterine life. So the intramembranous will begin by the 8th week of intrauterine life, and the formation of the bone will be primarily composed of hyaline cartilage and fibrous tissue, while the intracartilaginous will be first of all composed of the cartilaginous model, and later it will be replaced by the bony tissue. Intramembranous is basically directly originates from the embryonic mesenchyme, which we have discussed several times. We have talked about the endoderm, ectoderm and mesenchyme, and we have seen various tissues arising from these layers, and we know that these are the germ cell layers, and the stem cells from here differentiate into various tissues. So in this case, the mesenchyme is responsible for the intramembranous ossification development, intramembranous ossification, or the bone development. And here the embryonic mesenchyme directly differentiates into the bony tissue. It usually occurs in embryo. In case of bony bones which are urgently required for sport or protection, the characteristic of this type of bone formation is its rapidity of formation. For example, the bones of the vault of the skull, your cranial bones, and the bones of the face, and also the clavicle, which is the collarbone, and the subperiosteal bone formation is also basically it occurs in the intramembranous ossification. So this is an very important MCQ, that the clavicle development is an example of which ossification. So this is basically an example of intramembranous ossification. The next is intracartilaginous, and as I have told you earlier that we use another terminology for this ossification, which is endochondral. And here, first of all, cartilaginous model of bone is formed, which later on transform into bony tissue. And examples include all long bones of the body except the clavicle, short bones, and irregular bones. The next classification is membranocartilaginous, and in this type of classification or the bone development, the bones will partly ossify in membrano, means in membranous ossification, and the half of the part or partly it will ossify within the cartilage or endochondral ossification. So the examples include the bones at the junction of the vault and base of the skull, which are formed by this method, and these include the sphenoid bone, temporal bone, and here another important example is the clavicle as well. Um, the part of the clavicle that is attached to the sternum is ossified endochondral or intracartilaginous, while the other part is ossified intramembranously. Another important thing about the intracartilaginous ossification is that it will include all those bones below the head except the collarbones. It will include all the bones below the head except the collarbone. So remember this. Next is the structural classification or the architectural classification, and on the basis of this we classify them into the compact bone or the spongy bone. Before going into the detail, let's look at the diagrams or at the structure of the compact bone and spongy bone. This is the structure of the compact bone, and you can see the osteon coming from it, and if we look at its detail, you can see that compact basically means a hard bone, and this is a hard bone because the osteons, which are the bone forming cells, are closely packed together. And another point to be remembered is that the compact bone has a very well developed Haversian system. So the osteon consists of the central canal called the osteonic or Haversian canal. You can see the Haversian canal in it, and which is highlighted with blue color, and it is surrounded by the lamella, and you can see the lamella as well. Between the rings, the bone cells, which are the osteoids, are located in the spaces which are called lacuna, and you can see the lacuna as well. Lacuna is not mentioned here, I think. Anyways, just remember that the osteocytes are basically located in the spaces known as lacuna. Small channels, canaliculi, radiate from these lacuna and to the osteonic or Haversian canal to provide it a passageway through the hard matrix. The osteonic canal or Haversian canal contains the blood vessels as well that are parallel to the long axis of the bone. You can see the blood vessels. Now we will talk about the cancellous or the spongy bone. Now here you cannot see a well developed Haversian system, and the sponge bone or spongy bone consists of bars and plates of the bone, and these contain the red bone marrow, and the canaliculi connects to the adjacent cavities instead of a central Haversian canal to receive the blood supply. So this is basically a soft bone. Compact bone or Haversian bone. Here well developed Haversian lamellae or cylindrical lamella are seen. The lamella consist of collagen fibers lying in a calcified material, and adjacent lamella are held together by interchange of fibers. Bone cells lie scattered between the lamella. Examples include the shafts of the long bones, outer and inner tables of the skull bones, spongy bones, which is the cancellous bone. Here the lamella are arranged flat and no typical Haversian systems are seen, and examples include ends of the long bones and diploid of the skull. So those areas that are hard are basically composed of the compact bone. The next classification is the regional classification that we have already studied in our earlier lectures, and we know that the human skeleton composed of 206 total bones, and we divide it into various regions. If we talk about the axial skeleton, so it includes total 80 bones, and there are total 22 bones in skull, including the cranium and the facial bones. Hyoid bone is one bone, a single bone, and then comes the ear ossicles, that are 6. Next is the vertebral column, which consists of 7 cervical, 12 thoracic, and 5 lumbar vertebrae. Sacral are total 5, but they fuse to form one single vertebra in adults. And coccygeal is 4 in number, but it also fused to form a single vertebra in adults. 12 ribs and 1 sternum bone, so they are total 80 bones. In our appendicular skeleton, our appendicular skeleton is next, which includes 126 bones. Bones of upper limb, which are 60, and bones of shoulder girdle, total 4. Bones of lower limb are also 60, and these include the bones of the hip girdle as well, which are two in the appendicular skeleton, and we are including the both sides, and these are total 126 bones in the appendicular skeleton. The next are the classification according to the size and shape. So we can classify according to the size and shape the bones into the long bones and long short bones. The long bones are those bones that would have two ends, which are also known as epiphysis. It would have a shaft, and it would have a long size, and examples include humerus, ulna, radius, and in the lower limb these bones are femur, tibia, and fibula. The second is long short bone, which is also called miniature long bone, and it would also have two ends. The one end would be the base, and the other end would be the head, which would be its distal part, and the central part would be its shaft, and its length will be shorter as compared to the long bone. Examples include the metacarpal bones, pharyngeus, metatarsal, and the phalanges of uh, the foot. Then comes the short bones, and they are small in size and have various shapes. Examples include the carpal bones, bones of the hand, which are 8 in number, and the tarsal bones of the foot, which are total 7 in number. Then comes the flat bones. They are characterized by two thin plates of compact bone, between which lies a variable quantity of spongy bone. They resemble sandwiches. Examples include scapula, sternum, ribs, and most of the skull bones. Irregular bones. Here the bones are irregular in shape, and examples include vertebra, hip bone, sphenoid bone, and the maxilla bone. Miscellaneous classification is next, and it includes the sesamoid bones, and it means seed-like, and these are those bones which develop in the tendons, and these bones can also develop within the tendons due to the pressure. The largest sesamoid bone is the patella, which develops in the tendon of quadriceps femoris muscle, which is also called your kneecap, and it takes part in the formation of the knee joint. Pisiform bone, and it develops in the tendon of flexor carpi and larynx muscle. There are unnamed sesamoid bones as well, which develop in the various muscle tendons. These include the flexor hallucis brevis, adductor pollicis brevis, which is the muscle tendon of your thumb. Flexor pollicis brevis, this is also the flexor muscle of your thumb. Tibialis posterior, behind the navicular tuberosity. Peroneus longus, on the side of the cuboid bone, which is the muscle of your foot. Gastrocnemius, we know this muscle. The next classification is the supernumerary bones, extra bones, and the most commonly develop in relation with the appendicular skeleton due to the traction or pressure on a particular part. For example, the polydactyl, which is the sixth finger, and you may have seen people with 6 fingers, so this is a supernumerary bone. The next classification is the accessory bone. They usually develop in relation with the axial skeleton. The supernumerary bone will develop in relation with the appendicular skeleton, while the accessory bone develop in relation with the axial skeleton. For example, the cervical rib, lumbar rib, bipartite patella, two frontal bones, and the two parts of the lumbar vertebra that has been failed to fuse to form a single vertebra. Cervical rib is basically a seventh rib, which rises from the C7 vertebra, which is the last cervical vertebra, and it arises above the first rib, the first true rib, and it the patient would have symptoms as well. He or she would have the weakness or tingling at the site of the cervical rib in the shoulder and arm, and he or she would also be unable to move his or her arm. Uh, Also, it can cause the thoracic case deformity, and the cervical rib can be on a single side. It can be on a right side, it can be on a left side, and it can be on both sides. Same goes with the lumbar rib, and it arises from the L1 vertebrae, and it also can be on right side or left side, or it can be on both sides. Pneumatic bones, these bones are hollow and are filled with the air. Ethmoid, maxilla, sphenoid, and these are basically the bones that contain ear sinuses. And if a patient has sinusitis, then these sinuses, ear sinuses, will filled with the mucus, and the patient would be unable to move his or her head, and he or she will also complain about having pain. And basically these ear sinuses are very important and have functions. They help in resonance, and they also lighten the skull. And the last example includes the mastoid process, though the mastoid process is not included in the ear sinuses, but it does contain the ear cells. And I have told you in the previous lecture that you can feel the mastoid process behind your ears. So these are the various types of bones: long bones, irregular bones, short bones, flat bones, and the sesamoid bone. And this is a skeleton which is showing various bones. You can see in the skull the cranial bones and the facial bones. There are the frontal bone, parietal bone, temporal bone, and in the posterior view you can see the occipital bone, maxilla and mandible as well. And mandible is the only movable bone in your skull. The next is the rib cage, which consists of sternum and rib cage, and we have studied that the ribs articulates with the sternum. Then is you can see the ilium, pubis, and ischium, which are the part of the hip bone. The spine, which consists of cervical, thoracic, and lumbar vertebrae. And in the upper limb you can see the scapula, humerus, radius ulna, and metacarpal bones, and also the phalanges. And in the lower limb you can see the hip bone or the pelvic girdle, the femur, tibia, fibula, and also the tarsal and metatarsal bones. Okay, so this is an example of the cervical rib. You can see the cervical rib arising from the C7 vertebra, and in this case this rib is on the left side of the patient, and you cannot appreciate it on the right side. And this rib is arising from the first true rib, above the first true rib, and this patient would have the tingling sensations or the pain on this side of the shoulder or arm. This is an example of the lumbar rib, and you can see the lumbar rib arising from both sides from the L1 vertebrae. And these are the parts of a long bone. The two ends of the long bones, which are called epiphysis, and the central part is called, or the shaft of the bone is called, the diaphysis. This is an example of a sesamoid bone, which is formed in the tendon of peroneus longus muscle. So that's all for today, and if you have any question regarding this lecture, you can ask. Thank you so much.